Next speaker comes from the UK, Chris Harfield.
Well, guys, thanks very much for having me. It's a pleasure to be a speaker here on the World Sport Blockchain Summit, the first of its kind. So, yeah, it's very nice to be here. And by way of very brief introduction about myself, I'm a co-founder of a sports agency that's been in operation for the best part of a decade now. We work across a number of sports, namely football, Formula One, cricket, rugby, athletics, and we have a lot of activity based on the athlete management side of professional sports, and we also represent brands within sports. So we'll be giving a sort of an opinion based on those, on how the sports world and certainly the blockchain industry is affecting those two particular parts of the sports industry, and I hope you guys enjoy it.
Chris, welcome to the summit. We have a long history of involvement in the sports industry. What would you say has changed the most since you started?
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of change generally in sport. I always think that the advancement of technology is what's changed sport, but it's not just changed it in the way that perhaps in motorsport cars are getting faster or something like the technology side does for that. I think if you actually look at sports like football, it's changed things dramatically in the sense that even our understanding of nutrition, the understanding of how players train and all of that side of things, it's been something that's quite big. So I guess if I was to say what's the biggest or what has changed significantly the most, I think it's generally the advancement of our understanding of the athletes themselves. If you were to look at a footballer 20 years ago, compare him nowadays to a Cristiano Ronaldo, I think physically there are huge differences in what that sportsman looks like, their speed, their agility, their skill. It's changed dramatically, and I think that's been based largely upon the understanding that we have of technology, and I think, and certainly how that technology is used. I'm sure a lot of people here know about the way that we're now using the technology to support referee decisions. I mean, this is something that again is very new, and it's a new technology that's perhaps saving us from these terrible decisions that perhaps cost games or teams matches. So that certainly for me is really, in a nutshell, it's technology has changed, and the sports world is embracing it and utilizing it.
What would be the biggest challenges facing the industry today?
Well, I think the biggest challenges for me is sport, unlike any other industry, it's continuing to grow. We have more fans, more engagement, players' endorsement fees are going up, transfer fees are going up. So the popularity of the sport is clearly growing on an annual basis. So I think as far as what do we challenge, well, how do we support that growth? Nowadays, the fan that supports a football club or a Formula One team or whichever is very much regarded as being a millennial. They spend a lot of their time following sports in different ways than perhaps we used to in years gone by. Most of it's censored from a mobile phone, through social media channels and things like that. So I think it's what is the biggest challenge we've got? For me, it's how do we support or continuing to support the growth in sport? How do we continue to make it engaging for the millions of people that are watching the sports, and how do we keep growing them? That's going to be the biggest challenge we face, and and it's going to be interesting to see how the various different sports teams and clubs, how they tackle that question.
Which technologies, if any, will radically change the face of sports in the near future, in your opinion?
Well, there's a lot of new technologies. I think, AI, VR, blockchain, these are all new technologies which are being pioneered at the moment. Quite how they're used and implemented within sport is going to be interesting to see. I mean, for me, I sort of almost go back to the second question that you had regarding the challenges that we face today and how technology can fix those challenges. For me, having a virtual reality program or an AI program or something where you can actually say to fans, hey, we're going to give you, you're going to be in the locker room at halftime. We're going to give you, you're going to be sat there listening to the talks that the manager gives and so forth. I think it's engaging the fans and engaging people to break down the barriers between the professional sportsman and the fan. How do we bridge that gap and move them closer together? You know, and I think actually, as much as AI, VR, that they all have a part in that, I think blockchain has a part in that too. I think that blockchain creates a community that we're seeing through, you know, the purchase and acquisition of tokens, etc. And I think that in years to come, that's going to be something which sports teams are going to implement. I mean, it's not a far-fetched concept to think, why can a sports club or a sports team that has millions and millions or billions of fans internationally, how can we create a community for those fans? And I think blockchain and the tokenization perhaps of sports teams is a great way of doing that.
You're mostly working in motorsports. What would be your advice for a talented driver on the onset of his or her career?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think in motorsport, it's I mean, motorsport is kind of like any other sport. What you ultimately want to try to do initially is you want to tell yourself or ask yourself the question, where do I want to be? Some drivers, if you're a young driver, you may see yourself being a Formula One driver. Maybe that's your goal. Perhaps you want to be a sports car driver. You want to win Le Mans, or a NASCAR driver, or an IndyCar driver. And I think that ultimately the key concept that I think that's really important for young drivers is to establish, where do I want to be and what is required for me to get there, and work backwards from that point. If you want to be a Formula One driver, for example, these days, you've got to be able to carry yourself very well with brands. You've got to be able to interact with people very well. You've got to have a technical understanding of racing cars and what value you can bring to a team. And I think if you understand that idea, you can then go back to your effectively 3 years before that point and think, right, well, what do I need to do? How do I build myself to being that product that these teams want? You know, I think a lot of people go into it perhaps with a slightly, you know, dreamer attitude as to, I desperately want to be a Formula One driver, or I desperately want to win the Indy 500. But, you know, I think you have to break it down into small steps and understand, how do I go about that? And I think as well, most importantly, is create a team of people around you. You know, I think we're all well aware that no one person can be the jack of all trades, but you know, I very much think that the key of any of these things is to surround yourself with people that can help you achieve your goal, and create that network around you.
Can you share a success story you're especially proud of to our viewers?
Yeah, I mean, there's as I said, I mean, we work as a company. We work across 2 platforms. One of them is brand representation, and one of them is athlete representation. So for me, I can kind of give an example on each. From the athlete side, we took a young driver who was he was a vice world karting champion and a European karting champion, and we took him all the way through from grassroots motorsport through to the Indy 500, and we took him on the various different paths and levels. He won numerous races and championships and was an exceptional talent. And I was really proud of that specifically because motorsport has got huge financial demands on drivers. The participation number, I guess the cost of participation is extremely high. So it's not like football where you need a pair of boots and off you go. You know, motor racing, there's huge costs involved in that. And we broke down those barriers for him. And we enabled talent to actually shine and to be able to sort of not have to worry about the limitations that normally face the industry. We were very proud of that, and continue to be extremely proud of him as a driver, and wish and you know, long wish that he continues to do all that he can. I think that on the brand side, we did a piece where a lot of companies these days, they look at sport as certainly we help them understand that sport can be used to grow a business. The support, the fanatical approach that fans have to sport, and just the sheer TV numbers and volume that sport commands these days is something that brands have historically leveraged themselves on. And there was a company called Plus 500 who we worked with as an agency and represented them, and we worked with them. I think that began maybe 5 or 6 years ago, and we brought them into sport. They used their company and leveraged themselves with Atletico Madrid. They became the front of shirt sponsorship with that, and it was really a case to try and give a company that is effectively a tech company, it's a trading company that has apps, etc. And we use sport to give them a heartbeat, to give them an identity, to show the world that they exist, and to give them the platform that they needed to really globally approach and reach out to a lot of fans and show them their product. And they're a company that's been massively successful. They obviously operate a fantastic company, and we're thrilled that the growth that they've experienced directly correlates to the time that they've spent within sport sponsorship, and specifically with Atletico Madrid. Equally, they wanted to access a new market in Australia or grow in a new market, and we sat down with them. We talked about a strategy to do that, and they wanted to continue to use sport as a platform to grow their business. They became the front of shirt sponsor for the Brumbies, which is one of the top rugby teams in Australia, and they're seeing the same kind of growth. So, you know, for us, it's fantastic to see sport is a mechanism that companies can use, certainly if used correctly, to grow their business. And we're really pleased not just to help sportsmen grow their careers, but brands as well.
As someone working with sports talents, do you see SportyCo as competition or as a welcome addition to the sports industry?
To be honest, I very much see SportyCo as a company, for me, that are really breaking down barriers in the sports sector. I mean, I met Marco and Simon for the first time several months ago, and the vision that they have for SportyCo as a business, for me, is it's revolutionary, and it works. You know, there are barriers in the world that if you are a sports enthusiast, how do you get involved in the sports sector? How do you support a young footballer or a young racing driver? And the truth of it is that platform doesn't exist. You know, one of the questions that you had was, how do we use technology, or which technology could change? Well, I think certainly in the advancement of an athlete, I think what SportyCo are doing in the way that they're creating a platform to engage fans to help support young athletes pursue their goal is one that will change the game, and certainly one that I believe is absolutely necessary. And to be honest, I welcome it. You know, as someone in the sports sector, I want to be able to go to guys like SportyCo and say, hey, I've got the next Indy 500 winner, or I've got the next Formula One world champion, but I need some help in order to get some support for this young driver. But I want that help to be rewarded by somebody having a percentage of this guy's future. I mean, I think in a very primitive way, it's used in sport these days, perhaps in horse racing, where a group of guys get together and they all buy a share of a racehorse. And it works, people do it, but why are we stopping at racehorsing and at horse racing? Sorry. And I think that SportyCo have really identified that and are trying to break that barrier down. And you know, I'm thrilled to be working with them, and wish that we both have a great deal of success together.
Chris, thank you for your insight, and good luck with your future sports endeavors.
Thanks very much for inviting us to speak.